Welcome back to another Fall Friday where I share with you the best recipes for fall that are not only delicious, easy, but also frugal. I'm very passionate here at Savvy Sauté about spending less and creating more and showing you how you can do the same in your kitchen as well. So if you're ready, let's get cooking. For today's dinner recipe, I'm going to be sharing with you the easiest pork tenderloin with acorn squash. I actually have this pork tenderloin I picked up ready to cook in a bag, all seasoned up, on clearance at my grocery store for only $3.49. If you're able to find some discounted meat, go ahead and stick it in your freezer and use it for easy nights like this. So according to the directions on the package, we're just going to place that pack onto a baking dish without any labels, and then I'm going to get started with my squash. And you can see here with the pointy end, you don't want to cut it in half like that. You want to slice it this way. So go ahead and cut right down the middle of your acorn squash. This was 99 cents a pound when I purchased it, so a really great price for vegetables. If you're going to be purchasing something specifically like this, watch out for those sales. And then we're going to be scooping out the inside just like you would any kind of pumpkin or butternut squash. Another reason why this dinner is so easy is because we are placing the open-faced acorn squash into the casserole dish along with that pork tenderloin, and they're going to cook at the same time. We're just going to put a tab of butter into each along with 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, and that is going to completely season and tenderize that squash to a wonderful flavor. We're just going to stick this into the oven at 425 degrees as according to the package on the pork tenderloin. And now we're going to move on to our quinoa. You could use rice, brown rice, or whatever kind of grain you want to, but I really enjoy quinoa. And one of the tricks that I've learned to help it taste even better is to go ahead and rinse it before you cook it. I'm combining 1 cup of quinoa with 1 3/4 cup of water into my saucepan. Let that come to a boil on a medium heat. Once it boils, turn it down to a low heat, cover it, and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. Then you can fluff it with a fork or a spoon. I am serving this dish with some fresh asparagus that I picked up on sale for $1.49 a pound. Just like to put that into a skillet with some water, let that go on the stovetop, and then add a little bit of butter and salt. After 45 minutes of cooking, go ahead and carefully cut open the pork tenderloin bag and then remove it using tongs. Place it onto a platter or cutting board and let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes before slicing into it. So I'm just going to go ahead and place our quinoa onto the platter and then drizzle some of that wonderful broth and drippings that we have from the pork tenderloin over top of it. I'm also going to place on the platter our asparagus, and here you can see that tenderloin is just resting. Now I also let the acorn squash cook for 10 more minutes in the oven while the pork was resting. And then once it was all completed, I sliced the tenderloin, drizzled some more of that wonderful juice over top of it, and served everything on the beautiful platter for family style service. And it was so delicious. This particular flavor of tenderloin was seasoned with peppercorn, and it was very strong peppercorn flavor, but one of our favorites. For dessert today, I'm going to share with you the recipe for pumpkin streusel coffee cake. Again, I will leave in the description box the full recipe for you, but I'm using flour, brown sugar, white sugar, powdered sugar for the glaze on top after, some baking soda, baking powder. I'm also using cinnamon and nutmeg. The recipe calls for pumpkin pie spice, but I'm just going to use those 2 today. I'm also using a stick of butter. Now the recipe does not call for vanilla, but I'm going to add in a splash on my own. Plus you're going to need some oil, milk, and 1 cup of pumpkin puree or pure pumpkin. So we're going to go ahead and get started by mixing up our dry ingredients. That is 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We're also going to need our baking powder, baking soda, and then your pumpkin pie spice, or in this case, I'm just going to be using 1 whole teaspoon of cinnamon, and then I'm also going to use in about a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. gonna switch things over to our wet ingredients. So we're going to start with our oil. I'm just using a canola oil, but you can use whatever you have. Even melted butter would work fine. You're also going to add in the milk, the canned pumpkin. We're going to also need our sugars. So the recipe calls for brown sugar and white sugar. Then we're going to add in our pumpkin pie spice, or cinnamon and nutmeg. And then we're also going to add in some vanilla. So once you get all of that combined, we're gonna set that aside and start working on our streusel topping. The streusel topping is a basic combination of flour, brown sugar, butter, and we're also going to add in some cinnamon and nutmeg to this, but I'm going to double the recipe. For the coffee cake, you're just going to go ahead and follow the recipe as exactly listed in the description box. But today I am going to just double the recipe. That's why I'm using an entire stick of butter, and here you see me adding more flour, more sugar, and more spices to this. I'm going to be using the topping for a second dessert that I will be sharing with you in another Fall Friday video. I'm just going to be using a lot of dessert this weekend for get-togethers, so I am preparing it all in advance. You're going to be needing a 9x9 baking dish, and my favorite trick to get your parchment paper to actually stay put when you put it into the dish is to crinkle it up like this. It really does make a difference. So if you find yourself getting frustrated with parchment paper, try this trick out. It's definitely a lifesaver. Otherwise, you can also grease the pan with butter or oil, and then you're just going to transfer over all of that pumpkin mixture. You can see here it is a pretty thick batter, so go ahead and smooth it down as best as you can, and then we're going to top it all with that streusel topping. Next, you're just going to bake this in your oven at 350 until a toothpick comes out clean. It should take about 35 to 45 minutes total, depending on how much streusel you put on top. So the next thing to do is just to enjoy it as is, or you can go one step further and make a delicious, easy glaze. I have shared this with you in a video before, but it is one of the easiest things that you can whip up. All you need is some powdered sugar, a touch of milk, and if you would like to, you can add some cinnamon for extra flavor. I go ahead and start with 1 cup of sifted powdered sugar. So if you have a mesh sifter, make sure you use it. Don't skip on this step because it does help to keep any kind of clumps out. That way you have a nice smooth glaze. But if you don't have a sifter, it'll still turn out pretty good. Just make sure you use a fork or something just to help get out any clumps that there might be with the powdered sugar. Then you're going to go ahead and add about half a teaspoon of cinnamon for some flavor. And then for the liquid, I'm just using milk. You can always use some vanilla or lemon extract depending on what kind of dessert you're using this glaze for. Today, I'm just going to be using milk. It should take about 2 to 3 teaspoons, but you can always add more if you need to. Pumpkin bread is always a crowd pleaser, and when you add on that streusel topping and some glaze to go with it, it's sure to be a hit at any get-together that you have. Just make sure that you leave a couple of slices back at home so that whenever you get up in the morning, you can have some as breakfast with your coffee. I hope that these recipes have given you some inspiration and a little bit of excitement to add to your meal plan this week. If you try out any of these recipes, make sure you let me know, and until the next video, I will see you in the comments.